Hey guys, Miss Smith here today to talk to you about emergent reading. You may have a child at home who you are trying to help become a reader or become a stronger reader. And reading, as we know, can be a very complex process. There's a lot to teaching a child to read. But what I want to teach you today is a really simple, easy thing that any of us can do at home to help strengthen our child as a reader. So one of the things that we can do is help build children's sight word vocabulary or their ability to recognize words on sight as they read them, so they don't have to struggle to sound them out, especially words that do not follow the rules, the phonetic rules. Some words you just have to know what they are. So the technique I want to teach you today is called incremental rehearsal. The first thing you're going to want is a list of words that your child may be trying to learn. So this could be a list given to you by your school. You can go online and look up things like the Dolch list or the Fry word list. There's a lot of lists out there that help build emerging readers' vocabulary. So what you're going to want to do is just have your child look at the list. You definitely don't want to drill your child on a list of words they do not know already, just because that would be very defeating and overwhelming, and it feeds into their developing view of themselves as maybe not a good reader. So what you want to do instead is just maybe make it game-like or ask them to look at the words with you and say, hey, are there any of these words that you could read for me? And just make it very non-threatening, however you want to do it. Then you're going to want to put the words into piles. So you're going to want to make a pile of words that your child very easily recognizes. So those are going to be things that they don't struggle, they don't try to sound them out, they just immediately know those words. And then you're going to want to make a pile of words that perhaps your child is struggling with or has no way to approach, they mispronounced or whatever. So you're going to have, these are easily read, I didn't have to struggle, I just knew them immediately. These are ones I'm either struggling with, I'm pausing to think about a lot, or I just have no idea. Then what you're going to do for incremental rehearsal is you're going to make a little flashcard pile, and it's going to be 9 to 1. Let me say this first. If your child does not have 9 known sight words, so maybe they're a very beginning emerging reader, that is okay. You can still do this process by choosing 9 things that your child can easily recognize. So for example, instead of the sight word you might have a flashcard that simply had the letter B on it, or a flashcard that had a circle on it if your child can easily identify shapes. Your goal, though, is to have a pile of 9 cards that your child does not have to think about what is on that card. They can just easily say it. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to count out 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, so I have a pile of 9 cards that my pretend child here, because I don't have one, can read easily. And then I've made a little pile that are going to be new words or words that my child is not yet reading. Not yet is the key here. Just because your child is an emerging reader or maybe a struggling reader does not mean that they are going to be a lifelong struggling reader. This is just not yet. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one card and we're going to focus on that card. But what you want to do is with the one new card, you are going to introduce it to the child. So you're going to say, Sally, today I want to tell you about this word. This is the word for. Can you say that word for me? For. The child would then repeat the word. Next, you would ask them if they knew how to use that word in a sentence. Do you know how to use the word for in a sentence? Could you use it in a sentence for me? And again, that word is coming up a lot in my sentences that I'm giving to the child. So maybe that might give them some clues. And then just give your child time. If they can come up with a sentence to use the word, that is very helpful because it helps put the word into context. Otherwise, maybe you could model a sentence for them. This is a sentence for you, Sally. Could you say that with me? This is a sentence for you. So then I would just ask them again, Sally, what was this word? And they would say for. Now, if Sally can't remember that this is the word for, I would just say, that's okay. This is the word for. Would you read that word again for me? For. So Sally's going to read for, and then I'm going to show her the next word. What was this word again, Sally? For is. Great. And then I would lay down another word. I would go back to the beginning. I would ask her to again read the new word. For is he. And then I introduce another one. We're going to go all the way back again. For is he on. Great. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning again. For is he on, and we're going to continue adding, but we're going to go back to the beginning. For is he on an A. For is he on an AN. For is he on an ANV. For is he on and a in the it. For is he on and a in the it you. What we were doing here, if you did not catch the pattern, is we had one new word. We had 9 known, easily identified words, pictures, letters, whatever it is that your child can easily identify. So your child is only having to focus on one new piece of information in incremental rehearsal. And they are getting repetitive attempts each time to go back and remember that word. The time they have to hold that word gets longer and longer as the pile gets longer and longer that they read through. Next steps with this, you can stop there for the day. You could just do one word, especially depending on how much your child struggled each time to produce the new word. If it was pretty easy for your child to produce the new word and remember the new word, then here's what you can do. You can take away the last card, or any card. You can take away a card of the knowns. You're going to put it away. You're going to slide this newly introduced card into the second spot or the first spot of your knowns, and you're going to introduce a new word. So I would say, Sally, I want to talk to you about this new word. This is the word was. Can you tell me the word? Was. Could you use the word in a sentence for me, Sally? I was playing outside. Great job. I love the sentence you chose to use the word was. Now notice in my new piles, I have the new word was, and then our word that was formerly the new word for is now the top word in the known pile. Now this again is only if your child easily picked up this word. Would you want to go on to a second word for the day? But you're going to just do like you did before. You're going to say, could you tell me this word again, Sally? Was. For. Was for. Was. Now, if your child gets stuck, which is very common when you're putting two new pieces of information, you can certainly remind them of the word was, for, and then they can give you the next word, he. And then you would just continue on, add another word. They each time go back to the new words and read through the list. Keep adding, go back to the new word, read through, add another one, go back to the new word, continue reading through. Each time coming back to that new word, so you're saying it over and over again, reading through those words. And just like you have had an opportunity, or your child has had an opportunity to read this new word multiple times, they're also getting to read the newest learned word as well there. So that is incremental rehearsal. You really don't want to do incremental rehearsal with your child more than 10 minutes in a sitting, and really probably 10 minutes in a day. Otherwise, it could become very tedious to you and to the child. And if you have a child that's active, it's certainly fine for them to pace around or jump around while as long as they're attending to what you're doing. That is certainly okay. But this is just one way that perhaps you could be successful teaching your child at least one new sight word a day. Keep your piles for the next day, and then you could just start with those, reviewing the one that you introduced the day before. Ask them, do you remember this word, Sally? Do you remember this word? If they struggle with either of those, you simply just put them back in the unknown pile, and you start fresh with them again as an unknown. If they do remember them from the day before, they can stay in the known pile, and you can move on to introducing a new word. So that's it here today for an easy way to learn sight words or any kind of information that's easily memorized. That is incremental rehearsal. Thanks for watching.